Live everywhere.
Daily Kos Radio on netrootsradio.com presents
David Walton. Kagro in the Morning Show. Now, here's David Waldman.
Hey, good morning, everybody. How are you? It is Wednesday, October 26th, 2016. What's going on today? Election's over. I voted yesterday, so I'm really bored now, and there's nothing to talk about. For the rest of you who might not have voted, well, let me recommend this. If you have the opportunity to vote early where you live, you should do it. There are a number of reasons why, not least of which is the convenience of being able to time your vote and go when the crowds are smaller, in some cases anyway. But in addition, the more of you who have banked your votes come Election Day, the further the Election Day GOTV, get out the vote, resources per person can go in getting out those who still have not voted. If you have banked your vote and they don't need to contact you and give you a ride to the polls, or when they knock on your door, you say, already voted, and they say, great, thanks, and move on to the next person who might need more convincing. It's all for the best. And, of course, if you keep yourself out of the line on Election Day, then those who have to face and brave those lines on Election Day will find them that much smaller. It's just a little bit less congestion in the way of your fellow citizens who want to go and vote. And because so many of them want to vote for Hillary Clinton instead of, I was going to say Vladimir Trump for some reason, but I might as well, Donald Trump, well, you should get right the hell out of their way. Plus, of course, I suppose if you live anywhere where you might find yourself, I don't know, intimidated, or at least witnessing these self-appointed poll-watching vigilantes from the Trump camp coming to try to intimidate you, well, wouldn't it be great if you didn't have to deal with them? And if you find that you've got time on your hands on Election Day because you've already banked your vote, help someone else do it, or help someone else weather the storm if they have to wait in line outside of their polling place, either braving the elements, braving boredom, or perhaps dehydration, or worse, braving protest and harassment by poll-watching, quote-unquote, poll-watching Trump supporters. They could use your support. And, of course, if you have already banked your vote and you are witness to something like this sort of intimidation, well then, you can be the person who goes for help and tries to get either the police or the elections officials or somebody there to try and straighten those things out. And if you're waiting in an hours-long line to cast your vote, well, you don't want to leave to go get help. And although you can always pick up the old cell phone and call for help, it's just so much better if you've got someone there who can help you and physically leave the line and go take care of things without possibly costing them their opportunity to vote. So I encourage you to go and do it. It's a good idea always to take care of things ahead of time. I wish the rest of my life was that simple. I know that these things need to be taken care of ahead of time. That doesn't always mean I get to do it or take advantage of the opportunity, but here in this case, I did. Of course, I have my own other reasons for banking my vote early. As usual, I am on the move on Election Day. It just happens to line up in a way that kind of annually gets in the way of my casting my vote on Election Day at my polling place. Not that I love doing that so much that I miss it any, but that will also mean likely that we are off the air with a live show. Certainly, that would be the Monday and Tuesday of the election week. I know that's a tough time to be off the air. We certainly have a surplus of stories that I can record in between now and then so that you have some new content. Although sometimes it feels like the day before Election Day, reading you news that's even just a day old sometimes feels a little bit stale. But since we're a day or so ahead of the curve, usually here on Daily Kos Radio, anyway, maybe it won't be quite so bad. But I'd love to leave you with some fresh content while I'm roaming the country in the day or so before Election Day. All very mysterious. I won't tell you what I'm doing because it doesn't matter. And, I don't know, privacy, something like that. Anyway, Greg Dworkin now joins us from Connecticut to catch us up with the news and polling and all the things that go along with it, including the latest insults to Megyn Kelly, probably. Hi.
Yeah, we're going to lead with that. But, the other thing you can do is volunteer to drive.
Yes. An excellent opportunity to lend, if you've been, say, you're thinking of getting into being an Uber driver. Well, how about a dry run? They don't pay you, but...
Right.
Volunteer at your local office, and sometimes it's driving little old ladies to the polls. Sometimes it's driving, gigantic, healthy football players to the polls. And sometimes it's delivering water to voters who have been standing in line, or phone bank people who are calling people to remind them to vote, or pizza
or you
to
can
volunteers.
Volunteer to drive veterans. I mean, there's a whole bunch of ways you could do it. Doesn't matter.
Or you could try to drive them off the street.
Talk to your local election officials. Talk to your local party.
Like Donald Trump. Yes.
And they'll get you involved.
They will. They will find a place for you to do it, and it's a great thing to do. And there's nothing quite like I've done it driving people to the polls before, and boy, are they appreciative.
Yeah, they really are. So this Megyn Kelly thing, Newt Gingrich tells Megyn Kelly, "You are fascinated with sex, and you don't care about public policy."
That's why you're a news anchor.
And the reason that he said that to her is she refused to spend her entire interview with Newt Gingrich talking about Bill Clinton's sex predator.
Oh, so she's obsessed with sex because she wouldn't talk as much about it as he wanted to?
You know how you have the magic words, the magic formula, there's a spell. If you say radical Islamic terrorism, like everything goes away. So he was pushing her and said, I want you to say Bill Clinton's sex predator. Go ahead, I dare you. Go ahead and say that. And Megyn Kelly said, we've covered this. And so he just starts harassing her. And as David Frum points out, what genius made this strategic decision to turn 2016 into a referendum on the question, are women human beings?
Donald Trump.
No, Hillary Clinton.
Oh, all right.
She's a genius. And, that's if they want to make it about that, she's perfectly willing to go that way.
I guess so.
No?
Yeah.
Deal me in.
I wasn't sure what prompted Newt's outburst. I was
trying to push him a little bit on Trump's sex issues.
Okay.
To put it in no finer term. And the fact is, it's interesting because Rick Wilson, who of course is managing the Evan McMullin insurgency in Utah, maybe Idaho, has been hinting all week that there's more Oppo drops to come.
Oppo Dropo.
That big story that you covered yesterday, which I think really is a big story about Trump and the cocaine parties and underage teenagers.
Oh, yes.
He refers to it and says, that's the shot. Wait for the chaser.
Yeah, well, we're all still waiting on Swedish Jewfish and her chaser and all this, which I think is, still yet to come, of course, although yesterday's story certainly prompted her to come out. She had another diary, just sort of laying the intermediary groundwork between her part 1 and part 2, I hope.
Right.
But yeah, it's certainly fertile ground for part 2, whoever drops part 2 here.
Right. I mean, let's not lose sight of the fact that he's losing anyway.
Yeah, okay.
But, the further down he goes, the happier I am.
Yeah.
And as it happens, yes, there are some new polls out. Yesterday was Democracy Corps. They have Clinton up 12. Today's ABC Tracker has Clinton up 9, down from 12. IBD Tip +2 in the two-way, +1 Clinton in the one-way. So the IBD Tip poll still is favoring Clinton. LA Times is back to a 1-point Trump lead, the only one. And there's, I think Armando had plenty to say about it on Twitter, but there's a new Bloomberg poll out of Florida, which I think is well worth ignoring.
Oh, okay.
It's Trump up 2, but they pretend that the only people that vote are people over 65. I think their likely voter screen is just so tight. And as Steve Shale pointed out yesterday, he had a tweet saying something like 44% of the Latino voters in yesterday's tally would have been unlikely voters in the likely voter screen. just to point out why it's really difficult to do this year, especially with people of color trying to figure out who's a likely voter. So just keep all of that in mind. The average Florida poll still has Clinton up by a couple of points, and that is the consensus in terms of where things stand. So Bloomberg's a great pollster, but again, as Armando pointed out, the people that model rather than use random digit dialing, I think are going to wind up being a little closer to the truth. We'll see that with the Upshot poll in North Carolina that had Clinton up by 7, rather than saying that it's a close race. So that's the polling. I think there's a lot of interesting stories out there. Let me just give you a few. Speaking of Florida, this is a Sasha Eisenberg story. Stephen Giacchino in Bloomberg, same organization that hosts the Bloomberg poll, but different authors. And they have a Florida story, which is often not talked about enough, and that's the Clinton's Florida secret weapon. And that's new Puerto Rican arrivals, those very same people that wouldn't make it into a likely voter screen.
Oh, yeah.
Why are they there? Well, things aren't so great back on the home island there in terms of finance and economics. And they write that the debt crisis has driven many Puerto Ricans to Central Florida, the Orlando area, and changed the landscape of the archetypal battleground state.
Okay. Well, we did hear about, in Armando's early Florida analysis. That there would be
he was the one that told us this was
population.
happening, and in fact, it's happening.
Wow. That's weird. We're right.
Reading the news ahead of the time.
Yeah.
Last Wednesday morning contained an unusual landmark in the endgame of the 2016 election season, the first time in months that Central Floridians could confidently buy a plantain without being hassled about their level of civic engagement. Throughout the year, the region has been overrun with clipboard-grasping canvassers listening for the distinctly accented Spanish of native Puerto Ricans. While in most states, registration drives focus on college campuses and African-American neighborhoods, Florida has presented a distinct demographic opportunity. The center of the state, several counties sprawling outward from Orlando, has been a destination for one of the most significant domestic diasporas in recent American history. The debt crisis that has been roiling Puerto Rico for the last 2 years has forced residents to flee the island in droves, with many settling in those counties. From senior citizens to 22-year-old college students, anybody who's anybody is moving here from Puerto Rico.
Aha.
There you go.
Okay.
4 years ago, Barack Obama won 60% of Florida's overall Hispanic vote compared to Republican Mitt Romney's 39%. This year, some national and Florida polls have pegged GOP nominee Donald Trump's support among Latinos below 20%. Below 20%, that's phenomenal. A difference that can place this ultimate swing state securely into Clinton's camp if her campaign can reach its turnout goals. And in fact, even the ABC poll that I cited today, 12-9, said, it's not really about changing minds anymore. This is all about turnout now.
All right, well.
Of course, Trump and Clinton are spending all their time in Florida.
Yes.
Except for the time that Trump is spending in his hotel.
Which, the one in D.C.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, because he very often spends his time in his club in Florida as well.
Right, but that's, I guess, not as failing as badly as the D.C. hotel. So
yeah, you can't tell when Mar-a-Lago is empty. It's not the same. So the D.C. is he doing that today or was that yesterday? I don't even know.
I don't know. I think it's today.
Okay. Once again, stepping off the campaign trail to make his best claim at being a real estate professional come tax time.
Yeah, I guess, but I can't say I know it's today. I can only say I think it's today because, who cares anymore?
Right. Well, another infomercial for one of his properties.
Yeah, but I don't think this one's going to be covered, gavel to gavel, as it were.
Well, with only 13 days left in the election, gee whiz, they caught on.
So let's get to some of the stories. This is Sam Stein, writing in Huffington Post. Donald Trump has irrevocably changed how we will grade our presidential candidates. Just try to imagine Mitt Romney with Trump's baggage. You can't. Try. Here's a thought experiment for those of you listening at home. Close your eyes for a second and go back to October 2012. Mitt Romney, engaged in a pitch fight to unseat President Barack Obama, is campaigning hard as the election closes, drawing major crowds, inspiring Republican visions of a White House takeover. And now imagine that a story breaks out detailing how his one-time company, Bain Capital, took $17 million in insurance money for business damages that didn't occur. Right? It would be a scandal. Romney's ethics would be questioned. Okay, forget that. Let's say, instead, a story broke that a super PAC, Restore Our Future, was caught discussing how to secretly fund illegal donations from a Chinese source into its coffers. All right, forget about that one. Okay. Let's say that neither the Chinese donations nor the insurance fraud happened. Instead, an article was published in the closing days of the race saying Romney had held parties with underage girls and cocaine. All right, that's impossible. It's Romney. All right, let's say he says that.
Hedges blank stare from the country.
Right. Let's say the article reported he'd openly discussed trying to pick up John Travolta's wife, Kelly Preston, just days after the couple's 16-year-old son had died.
Yeah.
You're right. Again, impossible to imagine.
But
that did happen, though. Trump. How about this one? An article comes out showing that Romney had used his campaign funds to purchase his own book, No Apology, and then turned around and sold the book and massively hiked up prices to the donors who were giving to him in the first place.
He may have done that. That I'm not sure about.
And all that just happened to Trump in the last few days.
Right, that's true. And, well, okay, he's a troubled man. But he's changed America. Take him back.
But it's not about him. It's about us. And I'll get to that in a minute. It's a very important concept there. Trump is not Teflon. Cumulatively, these stories have caused damage. He's very likely going to lose the election and by a margin far greater than Romney. But he will have fundamentally moved the Overton window for what qualifies as scandalous behavior.
Okay.
And you know what? Sam Stein is right. That might bring some positives with it in the long run, such as helping wash away some of the Puritan sensibilities and standards we have about how a politician should behave.
Okay.
If this doesn't matter anymore, there is just nothing whatsoever anybody would be interested about in terms of bringing up Bill Clinton again. I'm sorry, Republicans. It's done. And the funny thing is, the person that finished it as a campaign issue or as a political issue is Donald Trump. You can thank him. That's a pretty interesting concept there.
Yeah. Okay. That's a bit of a mind bender. I was thinking about that today, just in terms of how far we've come. Thinking back to like Reagan's first election, when there were actually just how quaint it seems that there were conservatives who liked Reagan in the country who were worried, and in a very fascinating and revealing way. They were worried actually about Nancy Reagan.
Astrology.
They were worried about her ability to serve as first lady, given that Ronald Reagan was her second husband, that she was a divorcee, as they said. Never mind the fact that Ronald Reagan had also been married previously, but that didn't come into the conversation. It was that the woman, in other words, that she had been spoiled previously, and she's 70-something years old. And, gee whiz, can she host a tea at the White House, given that she once had lain with another man in a previous marriage? I mean, people.
She once had known him. You got to use the biblical terms.
Yes, that's right. Exactly.
She had once known another man.
Yeah, just knew him casually. I mean, that was really a thing in 1980 among conservatives who liked Reagan, but they were willing to, and they said, well, he's a special case. He's from Hollywood. So that's the way they do things out there. As long as they're conducting themselves morally. Now, we're okay with it. Now, of course, we're on Newt Gingrich, who's out there defending the candidate. You're obsessed with sex. Never mind. My candidate has married a model, divorced her, married another one, divorced her, married a third model, signed his daughter away into modeling. Who may have been
more than a model. Who knows? And also got here illegally. Who knows?
Right, all of that. And along the way, he bought 3, maybe 5 beauty pageants and a modeling agency. And by the way, the surrogate who's speaking to you married his high school math teacher, divorced her after having an affair with a staffer, and married the staffer, then divorced her while he was having an affair with another staffer, a second staffer, married her. And you're the one that's obsessed with sex. Just wanted to let you know.
I don't think that line of attack is going to work. But the whole concept of it just being different than it used to be is kind of intriguing.
That's true.
This is a Molly Ball article from The Atlantic called Trump's Graying Army In the Republican nominee's nostalgia-fueled campaign, and we were just talking about nostalgia, older voters see their last chance to bring back the 1950s, but he could be starting to lose them too. And I think you just perfectly laid out why.
Well, maybe.
That's not the 1950s they were looking forward to. You know, thrice married and the shot and the chaser to come in terms of Trump's personal behavior and so on and so forth. So in Panama City, Florida, for example, where this story is written, the crowd at the Donald Trump rally was a sea of gray and white. That's pretty funny.
Oh, okay. Well, they were white.
They were not people of color, and they were all old. They hobbled on walkers and canes into the massive amphitheater, searching for a place to sit on the lawn. They were old enough to remember a different America, an America that was great, a place of strength and confidence where men were men and women were women, where people respected the flag and their elders and prayed to God. That was not the America they saw today.
Although I'm not positive they remember it.
Well, let's not get into that.
Okay.
Right? We're not going to do elder memory jokes today. At Trump's rallies across the country, not just in Florida, where the effect may be especially pronounced, it is common to find an abundance of the superannuated. In fact...
How is this not? Okay.
Yeah, it's pretty good here. In fact, senior citizens are his strongest demographic. In polls, voters over 65 tend to be the only age group he wins. In surveys conducted for The Atlantic by the Public Religion Research Institute, remember that's the one that has Hillary Clinton up by 15.
Public religion, okay.
PRRI. For example, Hillary Clinton led Trump in every age group under 65, but he beat her by a slight margin with those over 65. In the primaries, too, Trump supporters were older on average than those of other Republican candidates, and this is, of course, one of the reasons why they also tend to be a little wealthier than the conventional wisdom would have it be known. In other words, these are not economically troubled folks. They're actually wealthier than the average.
What? I thought this was about economic anxiety.
Well, economic anxiety apparently doesn't happen with people of color who are in the same, bracket.
Oh.
And still don't support Trump. But in the primaries, Trump supporters were older, and despite the stereotype of the Trump supporter as a prime-aged working man, Trump's campaign has actually been fueled primarily by support from the elderly. This makes sense, doesn't it? Trump's whole candidacy is predicated on nostalgia, not just making America great, but making it great again, returning it to an imagined pre-lapsarian state of greatness. Appropriately, Trump stole the slogan from Ronald Reagan. More even than most Republican candidates, Trump has run a campaign aimed squarely and frankly at old people's nostalgia, fear of danger, and anxiety about social change. He's also appealed directly to the desire to protect their government benefits.
Okay.
That's a big deal because that's where you break from Paul Ryan and everybody else.
Yeah.
But while virtually the entire rest of the Republican field was promising to restore fiscal discipline by reforming Social Security and Medicare, Trump insisted the programs didn't need to be touched. So let's look at the positive here, okay? In 2 weeks, Trump loses. He breaks the hold of scandalous moralizing. Scandal,
right.
What are you going to call them, moral peacocks? I don't know. Because Trump just has blown all of that away. And by catering to seniors, he also blows away the whole idea that all Republicans are for privatizing Social Security and Medicare. Because seniors don't want that, and seniors are a very strong Republican group.
Yeah.
So if you want to look at the bright side, 'tis an ill wind that blows nobody any good, there's at least room for, breaking that dogma out of the Republican Party. And again, you can thank Donald Trump.
I don't know if I will, but I could. That's the important part.
Well, we're just looking for good things here.
Oh, yeah, right. If there was another debate and they asked, what are some things that you could thank your opponent for? You could say that.
What are the good things about Donald Trump? Oh, I have some good things about Donald Trump. He's blown away this whole stupid morality stuff that Republicans always run on and then embarrass himself. And by the way,
we're finally done with family values.
Blown away the relationship between seniors and Republicans in terms of policy. So I would very much like to thank him for that.
I guess you could get away with that one. It's certainly as good or better than his children. But I understand why she had to say that. She was probably caught by surprise. And
she had to say something.
Right. I mean, it would have been funny to see her say, I'm really drawing a blank. You got me.
Well, my daughter Chelsea has good taste in friends, and therefore she's friends with his daughter, and so let me just say some nice things about them.
Yeah.
She's been over the house. I've made tea and given her cookies.
Yeah. I had to look up the recipe, but...
That's okay.
Okay.
Here's an intriguing article written by Julie Sedevi. It's in Politico. And the title is, Donald Trump Talks Like a Woman.
Really?
And strange as it sounds, the subheader says, it might be one of the reasons he's done as well as he has. He talks about the fact that he speaks emotionally. This is academic research looking at how candidates speak. And Trump may be preoccupied with grading women's looks, penis size, and locker room talk. Oh. But the way he speaks and the actual words he uses makes for a feminine style. He uses emotional words. He uses we a lot. We're going to make America great. He talks about maybe, seems, or perhaps, so he doesn't sound as definitive as males do. Males tend to say this is, and females tend to say, maybe, perhaps. And then also, this is analysis of his speech. He uses emotion-laden words like beautiful or despise, and, for example, and contrary to the common stereotype that men can't resist talking about themselves, women are heavier users than men of the pronoun I, whereas the reverse is true for the pronoun we. Mm-hmm. Women produce more common verbs, are, start, with, and auxiliary verbs am, don't, will, while men utter the, to, with, above. Women use fewer long words than men, and he fits all of the female stereotype speaking patterns that academics can come up with.
That is unexpected.
The next one after him, after Donald Trump, is Ben Carson.
The next most feminine
speaking style. And in fact, rating recent politicians is fascinating. At the bottom of the list is Jim Webb.
Okay.
And then Martin O'Malley, Dennis Kucinich, Ted Cruz, Chris Dodd, Lincoln Chafee, John Huntsman, Bernie Sanders. These are masculine language users. Hillary's right in the middle. She's flanked by Barack Obama, John Edwards, Joe Biden, and Rick Santorum. And then up at the top, all by himself, is Donald Trump. Different than anybody. Way more feminine than the next on the list, Ben Carson.
Well, Ben Carson was the most honest in college.
Well, here's...
I don't know what to say. He's the most feminine speaker. Well, I doubt very much whether he would see the value in that, but I don't know. Maybe he would.
Here's examples. They give examples. This is debating tax policy. The feminine use and the feminine framing, Donald Trump. My tax cut is the biggest since Ronald Reagan. I'm proud of it. It'll create tremendous numbers of new jobs. Regulations are going to regulate the businesses out of existence. When I go around, Lester, I tell you this, I've been all over, and when I go around, the most is the fact that I'm cutting regulation. I'm really calling for major jobs because the wealthy are going to create tremendous jobs. They're going to expand their companies. They're going to do a tremendous job. Right?
Okay.
And the masculine was Hillary Clinton responding, I don't think top-down works in America. I think building the middle class, investing in the middle class, making college debt-free so more young people can get their education, helping people refinance their debt at a lower rate. These are the kinds of things that will really boost the economy. Broad-based, inclusive growth is what we need in America, not more advantages for the people at the very top. And so then they go on and ask the question, do styles register with voters? And they say maybe in subtle ways. Maybe yes, maybe no. It's just that it's not something you would have expected from their traditional stereotypes of who they are. And stereotype busting is always fun.
That's a stereotype that I understand they have some data behind it, but that needs to be busted pretty good, and I'm happy to see it busted no matter who does it. I mean, I can't imagine that many people are super comfortable with saying, well, non-committal half answers. That's a characteristic of women. What?
Right.
No.
Well, let's give you a great male-oriented, solid, direct-to-the-point piece here in the Washington Post. Want to save the Republican Party? Drain the right-wing media swamp. It's definitive. It's declarative. It's written by Catherine Rampell.
Oh, well, what a man.
So there you have it right then and there, wrapped up in one example. But it's actually a very good piece. Donald Trump looks likely to get a whooping.
That's very male of her.
Or to prove his preferred Yiddishism, schlonging, in a few weeks.
If you have forgotten that one. Yes.
Forecast suggests many of his down-ballot co-partisans will as well. No doubt, should this expected defeat come to pass, Republican leadership will try to regroup and figure out what went wrong. Refers to the autopsy. But the sickness in today's Republican Party is not confined to its current standard bearer. It's therefore not curable by merely disavowing belatedly the soon-to-be defeated nominee. The sickness has taken over the Republican base, and there's only one antidote. If the Republicans want to save the Republican Party, they need to go to war with right-wing media. That is, they need to dismantle the media machine, persuading their base to believe completely bonkers, bigoted garbage.
Yeah, well...
Okay with that.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great idea. Good luck.
Well, it's going to happen. Breitbart's going to go to war with Fox News.
That's true. There will be that war. I don't know if that's going to be the... I doubt very much it'll be regular mainline Republicans saying, yes, this autopsy makes sense to me. Let us execute this as policy. It'll be brought to them. Oh, my gosh, what happened? We're at war, I guess. Okay. Yeah, there's no autopsying.
Right. I mean, it's not going to happen because it's planned. It's just going to happen because it's going to happen.
Somebody else is going to start the war because their autopsy says, kill you. Really, my autopsy is written. It's nuke it from orbit. It's the only way to be sure.
Right. All right, here's another one. This is Michael R. Strain, resident scholar at the American Enterprise Institute. 2016 was a massive failure. It'll take conservatives a lot of work to clean up after Trump. We should start now. The operative question facing the conservative movement is where it goes from here. And reading these conservatives in terms of realizing that they're losing and what happens is actually kind of interesting because it is going to be the discussion on November 9th and beyond. They're going to be too busy fighting themselves to immediately unite to hate on Clinton. The first step on that journey is to acknowledge the size of his failure. It is, if you'll forgive me the word, huge. A failure this massive cannot be dismissed easily or lightly. The path to repair and good health is not easy. Any party and political movement that nominated this man must have serious problems that extend all the way down to its roots. It'll be necessary to name these problems. Some of these are individuals like Sean Hannity, Laura Ingraham, and Rush Limbaugh, so he's on the same theme. Some of them are structural, for example, organization. And it's nice to see that both liberals and conservatives agree that Sean Hannity, Laura Ingraham, and Rush Limbaugh are the problem. It's nice. Some of them are structural, for example, organizations that make money by whipping the GOP base into a fury. You've talked about the grift. That is all part of that, including the email chains, and the process by which the GOP nominee is selected. And another problem is the GOP primary base's decision to nominate the man in the first place. These voters have agency, and they should not be exempt from the healthy criticism that will be necessary for the conservative movement to move forward. Thank you, Michael Strain. The big problem with the Republican Party is, in my view, Republicans.
Yeah. Oh, they're all over the place.
I know, but until they do something about that, they're going to have issues. I'm just saying.
The Republican Party is packed with them.
Well, you got to tackle that. If you don't tackle that, how are you going to get to the root of the problem? Or to put it in political terms, the root of the problem is the base.
Yes. So what do you do?
There's the base is at the root, and the root is the base. Voters,
glue traps.
It's just how it works. Voters have a duty. I don't know if that's masculine or feminine language, but there you have it. Voters have a duty to use their power responsibly. If only they could use their powers for good instead of evil, to make sober judgments about what is in the best interest of the nation and to advance virtue. The GOP primary electorate failed in this important task, and so, in fact, may I add, has the Republican House and most Republican elected officials. If you're more interested in preserving your job than you are in preserving the nation, then whatever happens, and too bad on you.
All right.
That's my 2 cents.
Well.
All right, solutions aren't obvious. The hard work should begin now. And I guess it begins by writing articles like this and getting paid for it.
Don't strain yourself.
Well, that's his name.
Strain. Yeah, that's right. I just realized that as I said it. Well, no wonder.
No wonder he's
sounds like a
pseudonym
to me.
Conservatives should offer an agenda of empowerment, unafraid of using limited but energetic government to encourage work and earn success. The conservative agenda should not attempt to micromanage the economy or the lives of Americans. The hard work of creating this agenda should proceed without delay. Trump is pus oozing from the infected wound.
Ew.
The wound needs to be cleaned and healed quickly.
Yes.
The time for reform is now. All right, so he's thrown down the gauntlet of something.
Yeah, he's pus. Gross.
Something. All right.
Pussy.
Here's two last articles. The last one will be right up your alley. The first one is from Dylan Matthews from Vox. I love Dylan Matthews. 21 maps and charts that will change how you think about the election, and I'll just read some of them to you. You don't even have to see the charts. I sent you this long list, as I often do, making it difficult for you to find the one I'm talking about, so I'll just put it right here at the bottom.
Terrific.
All right. Vox. Americans are as happy with the economy as they were in 1995. This is an election has been widely covered as one where economic discontent has provoked deep anger in the electorate, economic anxiety, yada, yada, yada. Actually, not really.
Not so much for most people.
Right. But it comes through across the board last year, especially at the bottom. A majority of Americans think President Barack Obama is doing a good job, so when they keep running and saying, oh, it means a third term of Obama, well, actually, that's good. Most people like him.
Okay.
All right. 2/3 of Americans like at least one presidential candidate. Everybody knows that everybody hates everybody, except that's not what the data shows.
Okay.
Right.
I've talked to people.
American support for foreign trade is higher than it's been for more than 20 years.
American support for foreign trade?
And more Democrats than Republicans have favorable opinions of foreign trade.
Huh. Okay, well, I guess the Sanders campaign.
Because everybody knows, everybody hates TPP and everybody hates foreign trade. And funny thing is, Bush's free trade czar, that would be Rob Portman, he's running way ahead of Trump in Ohio.
Yes. I don't know, some people seem to like the trade thing.
Yeah, well, a lot of people do.
Yeah, all right. Well,
right. Here's another one. Americans are more supportive of racial diversity than Europeans are, according to Pew Research. Better place to live because growing diversity. U.S. 58%, Sweden 36%, UK 33%, Spain 31%, France 26%, Germany 26%, Greece 10%, Poland 14%. Just to give you an idea.
Well, in Europe you can drive to the diversity.
Yeah, I suppose, but it's almost true in a lot of parts of America. Nearly 60% of Americans oppose reducing immigration. These are facts that just don't normally get highlighted on the trail.
Says who?
Says the polls, all of them.
Which one?
Everyone. Over the past, Pew, and in particular Gallup, these are the ones that are being cited. Over the past 10 years, more people have immigrated from the U.S. to Mexico than vice versa.
From the U.S.? Well, yeah.
So more people are going from here to there than there to here. So pouring across the border. We're pouring across their border. They are the ones that should be building a wall. The gringos are ruining everything.
Trump Baja, I guess.
Your odds of being killed by a refugee terrorist are 1 in 3.6 billion.
A refugee terrorist? Okay. Yes. It's because they left their bombs at home.
Right. Actually, the cause of death for your clothes melting or igniting is slightly higher. It's just,
Oops. Well, okay. Everybody, you heard it.
Right. We're only up to number 12. Fear of terrorism is at its highest point in more than a decade.
True.
That is true. And the murder rate is half of what it was in 1991.
Not counting terror murder.
And here's one that comforts me. Only 6.2% of Americans backed Donald Trump in the primaries.
Oh.
As a percentage of voting age population.
Huh. Well, that makes more sense. What a stupid 6.2% they are.
They are. They are deplorable. But at the same time, it's not as bad as it looks for the whole rest of the country.
I guess that's true. Well, I mean, I guess if you can fit every Trump supporter in a medium-sized arena locally, then I know that makes it sound to them. They think, look how many of us there are. To me, it's like you only need one parking lot for this guy.
Right.
Okay.
Given the stuff we often talk about, I'm going to love this one. This is 15 out of 21. Most of the time, when polls change, remember the ABC poll went from 12 to 9. From yesterday to today, the tracking poll.
Oh, yes, right, okay.
Most of the time when polls change, it's not because people actually change their mind.
Right.
Right? While the polls show race changing dramatically, in reality people aren't changing their minds. Only 0.5% of respondents actually switch. The simplest explanation is the mid-campaign shifts are a polling artifact.
Yeah. I just asked a different group of people this time.
Yeah. Or that black voter didn't sign into the LA Times that day.
Right. the one guy who's changing
The
everything.
Trump voter, the Trump black voter from Ohio or whatever. Millennial
He
Trump
was
voter.
at the rally yesterday, that guy.
Right. Number 16 of 21. Only about 5% of Americans are actual swing voters.
Okay.
Everybody else has one party or another party. Hang on one sec.
Okay, hello. Hi, how are you? Who are you voting for? I'll have the rest of this conversation. Important call, I guess. Well, yeah, I guess I'm. That's one of the sort of the built-in weirdnesses about this, the rally size, and I guess we've been clued into this for a long time, but I guess it would be difficult if you really, particularly if you were relatively new to politics or hadn't been excited by a candidate before.
Or realized
seeing
that
those
Bernie
giant-
Sanders didn't win even though he had larger rally sizes.
That's true, too. He has not acknowledged that part.
We've talked about this on the show. Rally
Yeah.
size is a campaign decision. Somebody decides to spend $1 million on cleanup
Right.
and renting the venue and putting the porta potties or whatever it is you have to do in order to make sure that the rally can
If they
happen.
do it.
And that's where you're spending your money. And other campaigns, like the Clinton campaign, said, you know what, I'd rather put the money in, get out the vote, and we'll have small rallies.
Yeah. we
That,
can't
that's a
fit
campaign
all our
decision. It's
people.
not a measure of enthusiasm.
Yeah. I mean, if you live in a place where there's super enthusiastic turnout for events like the college football game, places that live and die, everybody in town claims to live and die by how the local college football team does. And if you notice, and even in places where they have mega stadiums, 100,000 seat stadiums, they get sell out every time. It's not like there's tumbleweeds in the streets of Ann Arbor when there's a game on. There's a bustling city out here. Why? Because it's only a tiny fraction of the people have jammed themselves into this, circus here. And if you take them all out and let everybody vote, they're still overwhelmed by
Everybody else.
masses outside who just said, I don't care. I know what I'm doing. I'm going to vote. It's going to be fine. I don't need to go to a rally. Even if some of them are Trump supporters, it's just not a lot of people. It's hard to get people to imagine that that's the case when they're standing in that crowd, of course.
Right.
And they're so happy at finding other people who think like they do when they've been told correctly all along that the way they think is crazy. Wow, there's other crazy people.
See, here's 17 of 21. If only
All right,
men voted,
still
Trump
going.
would win in a massive landslide, but if only women voted, Clinton would win in a bigger, massive landslide.
Oh.
And Nate Silver actually charted all of these. It talked about, I guess, a couple of weeks ago. It's kind of fun, though, because if just women voted, I think the only there's a very small sliver of states, mostly from West Virginia down to Louisiana, kind of a angle there. Kentucky, Tennessee, Alabama, Mississippi, Louisiana, Arkansas, Oklahoma, and then a couple out west, Idaho, and Utah, those sorts of states. So, it's something we know, and that gender gap, of course, is going to be huge. Number 18, Gary Johnson is the most successful third-party candidate in at least 20 years.
And he's not doing well.
And he's not doing that well. And that puts him at 9%, which he really isn't anymore. Perot in 96 got 8%. Perot in 92 got 20.
Yeah.
Nate-
Hard to remember that. That's
Ralph
more than 20 years
Nader
ago.
in 2000 got 4%. Johnson's going to challenge him.
Okay. It's close.
By the time it's all done, anyway.
Yeah.
Number 19, Republicans are absolutely crushing Democrats in state legislatures. That's a problem. Let's see if we can fix that. 20, state legislator voting is based mostly on presidential approval. So as Obama does better, maybe that'll improve. And 21, and last, sometimes county officials represent more people than U.S. senators.
Oh, okay.
That's the kind of like the L.A. County Supervisor represents 2 million people. The U.S. Senator in Wyoming represents 500,000.
True.
Just for example. Your average U.S. House member represents about 700,000 people. Mm-hmm. And that's really kind of distorted by the fact that some are bigger and a lot are smaller. So that's pretty amazing. L.A. County of 2 million.
Yeah.
Way bigger than Wyoming. Just keep that in mind.
Very true. And not only, and they've got 2 senators.
Yep.
By the way.
Okay, so my last piece for you, and I'll leave this with you because we were talking about this the other day, and lo and behold, the day after we talk about it, I actually see it in the news.
Yes.
Is this one? No, this is not the one I was looking for. I saw a article, which I'll try to find for you, about Republicans making noises about getting rid of Ryan after Trump loses.
Ah.
And then they were naming names. They were Freedom Caucus people who were talking out of turn and, maybe making those plane reservations to get back or whatever.
I see. Yeah, check their leadership pack giving.
Right, but the one that actually I have here instead is from the Huffington Post. Trump loyalists planned voter intimidation using fake ID badges, fake exit polling, until Huffington Post asked them about it. And this is about that Vote Protectors Roger Stone plan.
Yes.
His own exit pollers there. And
right.
So this is that story, in case you're interested.
I have that open, as a matter of fact.
Cool.
Roger
So
Stone
I'll
should
leave
be
that
arrested.
with you. I got one here about Donald Trump and anti-Semitic conspiracy theories. And the question on the table is, does he know what he's talking about or does he not? And of course, it doesn't matter. Because he speaks openly about race, but dog whistles about Jews.
Yes, well, it's an Ivanka problem.
A lot of his kids, I think a lot of his kids are married to people or families who are of the Jewish persuasion.
Is that right?
And so, therefore, by definition, he's not anti-Semitic. He just uses anti-Semitic language.
Yes.
So what does that mean? So that's what this piece is about. I thought it was kind of interesting. And I'll leave you with that. That's my roundup for today. Only a little bit of polling and a lot about stories. Polling's becoming less and less relevant as we get closer to Election Day with people already voting. There's more than 6 million people who already have. We're going to be following early voting tea leaves to figure out what's going on. We're going to be looking at get out the vote because that's where it's at more so than what the polls say. Remember, changes in polls don't mean people have changed their mind. And we'll wait and see if there's a Thursday, Friday Oppo drop, the chaser to the shot. We'll see if that happens. And with that, I will leave you. This is Greg Dworkin speaking with my friend David Waldman, Kagro in the morning, who's got an hour and 10 some odd minutes left to talk about we'll see what.
Yes, we will.
Knowledge type
Slowly.
or something else?
Okay. Thanks very much, Greg.
All right.
Appreciate the good start this morning. And, let's carry on from here.
All righty. Take
And
care.
Of course, very good. Thank you. You do the same. Joan McCarter will be around to help us fill that hour and 10 minutes at some point. So I'm not terribly worried about that. The only thing that worries me is how much can I cram in before we have to get our weekly download from Joan, which is really what we're here for. So, but I will give you a couple of things to think about in between Greg's appearance and, of course, Joan's as well. And we're looking forward to that. I should have, let me make sure that I have Joan's latest stories at hand, too, so that we can discuss those somewhat intelligently. But let's throw in this Roger Stone bit, something I think we've noted along the way that he had some kind of, I don't know, maybe we didn't talk. We've talked about just kind of what since we're fascinated with sex, what a weird creep Roger Stone himself is. It is a little fascinating, let's say, that somebody like Donald Trump, who has such an enormous collection of sexual peccadillos, I guess you could say. It's a great word for that. There are to choose from, let's say. But it's such an enormous issue for him. And it also is, of course, for Gingrich, who, for whatever reason, decided to take on Megyn Kelly about this yesterday. And we already know that it's an issue for, we've known that Roger Stone has been like this, but so many people who are close to Donald Trump are just obsessed. And I guess it's no surprise then that Roger Stone ends up falling in with them. And as I was demonstrating, Monday night on Twitter, Tuesday on the show, that I'm just not kidding when I say that it's inevitable for Trump world and its sex cultism to overlap eventually with the alt-right's similar orientation, let's say. Okay. Well, let's take a look at the Roger Stone thing, because this is actually supposed to be political and not about his sexual weirdness. Roger Stone's group planned to send out poll watchers with fake credentials. And he's taking a slightly different angle, I think, than most of the Trump operatives about poll watching. The Trump call for poll watchers has been cruder than this, in that he's basically saying, I want you to go to the polls, and I want you to beat up people, essentially, just physically stop them from voting if you think that they're there to perpetrate fraud. Given that none of them will be there to perpetrate fraud, because fraud in in-person voting is not something that really happens, I don't know what they're going to do. They're going to end up wasting their time, but they'll probably end up, because they all believe that voting fraud, in-person voting fraud, is rampant, and they believe that it is people of color and immigrant communities who do it. They're just going to be spending their days hanging around looking for people to harass or beat up without any justification whatsoever. Not that there ever was any. But Roger Stone plans something slightly different, something slightly more sophisticated, and something a little bit closer to the line, falling into a gray area where they might actually end up getting away with a lot of their harassment. Well, let's read through it. A group who wrote this, Allegra Kirkland at TPM is who we're reading here. A group affiliated with longtime Donald Trump ally, and they are on again, off again, these guys. Oh, and I forgot to throw Roger Ailes' name into the mix. Sorry. Anyway, longtime Donald Trump ally Roger Stone planned a coordinated intimidation effort involving sending volunteers wearing fake ID badges. And I guess, what they mean by that is that the ID badges will be indicative of nothing in particular. They may also not actually display the people's actual names. That's entirely possible. That would be interesting all by itself. If you're a police officer and you run into one of these guys and you check their credentials and they've got something hanging around their neck, if they go through with this plan, and I guess it's hinted that they won't now that they've been found out, which actually makes me believe that they never really intended to do it at all. They were just hoping to get some publicity about what a bunch of badass operatives they are, and that would really be it. In other words, free publicity for not actually doing anything, just hinting that they were going to do something really dirty, and with Roger Stone, people believe it. Anyway, they'll be wearing fake ID badges. So, I was saying, if you're a police officer and you confront one of these people and you look at their credentials and determine these are indicative of nothing in particular, that's why they're fake. You might also ask to see another ID and see whether the names and faces match. I'd be interested to know. I don't know if it gives you grounds to take them downtown if they have credentials, quote unquote credentials on that have a different name or identification. I don't really know. Anyway, but if there is, do it. Bring them downtown. All right. Let's see. Let me continue with the article here. So what's the deal? They were going to wear fake ID badges to monitor polling stations and record video of voters. That's what the Huffington Post reported on Tuesday, so I probably should be reading them, but I'm reading this instead. The website for Vote Protectors, that's capitalized, Vote Protectors, Stone's group, allowed volunteers to print and create an unlimited number of official-looking badges and provided instructions on how to upload live stream, though it does say live steam, videos of voters to the site. Confronted about these unorthodox tactics by Huffington Post reporter Christina Wilkie, Stone first said he knew, quote, nothing about badges or videotaping. They don't need no stinking badges, I'm sure he said, before claiming those proposals were added to the website without his approval. I have ordered them taken down. Bad idea, as is videotaping. First I've heard of it. I am only interested in a valid, no, scientifically conducted, no, exit poll, he told Huffington Post. His plan originally, if you believe his claims, I think essentially was that he wanted to conduct his own exit polling in the race because he was going to use it as evidence of the vote rigging that Donald Trump claimed was going to be rampant. In other words, if he could accurately exit poll every place and come to the conclusion that Trump had actually won in a landslide, according to his exit polling, then it would make it very awkward when the news networks that night declared instead that it was Clinton who had won in a landslide. And indeed, if he was able to, in fact, interview everybody in America as they left the polls and get an honest and accurate answer, and the outcome of the election was very different from the data he had collected, well then, I mean, if it was comprehensive data, I would have said, well, gee, that does sound rather troubling. Of course, you're not going to be able to get that. Exit polling, not particularly reliable, and so it's only used for certain purposes in a very limited number of ways and in a limited context these days, as they've found. And I think the controversies that have arisen with exit polling in the past are specifically of this type, that they cannot be relied upon to give you an accurate picture of who's winning, the basic question of who's going to win the race, the horse race stuff. It can give you a decent picture sometimes about what motivated people to come out to vote, what sorts of issues were important to them, how the closing days played in their minds, etc. But you're never going to, it's pointless really to try and predict the outcome of the race from exit polling, not the least because you're about to find out what the outcome of the race is, and learning it a few hours ahead of time doesn't really do much for you. But you're about to conduct the biggest and most comprehensive poll with the largest universe ever, and clearly get the most accurate result. As a matter of fact, because the poll that you're taking on election day by asking people to cast their ballots is identical with the actual election that you're contesting, 100% sure that your results will overlap. It's definitional. But the idea that you can ask some smaller percentage, I mean, I know that this is the basis of polling. We're only asking a small sliver of people and then extrapolating a result from that. That's because no pollster can feasibly ask everyone in America, and even if they could ask everyone in America who they were voting for and trust their answers, that still doesn't count as a vote. There's still time for them to either change their minds and cast a different vote, make a mistake and accidentally cast a different vote, or somehow forget to show up and so therefore not have a vote cast at all. Only the election day poll tells you what the actual result is going to be. But okay, so his idea was, I'll do exit polling and therefore I'll be able to prove bias on the part, and unfairness and cheating on the part of the powers that be, because my exit poll will differ from what the actual results said, even for that very district, even if you're only comparing the actual outcome of that district where we had people and asked everybody that we could. Part of the reason will be lots of people will come out and they'll say, I just want to ask you a few questions, and people will say, go to hell. I don't give a damn what you want to do. I'm out of here. So they're not going to get everybody anyway, and that person will have just voted. They definitely registered a ballot, and they definitely refused to talk to you. How do we count that? Anyway, more interesting, I think, is that they intended to be out there with video cameras filming people and doing so, presumably outside of the exclusion zone that most states establish for politicking around a polling place, although it would be very interesting to see whether they tried to violate that 100-foot rule, as it is in this state and in most states, on the grounds that what they were doing wasn't politicking, it wasn't campaigning. I'm just asking questions of voters and taking a nonpartisan survey, but they'll probably force them back past the 100-foot line anyway. So what are they doing? Well, let's see. According to Huffington Post, the exit poll section of the voter protection site, Vote Protector site allowed anyone to register as a volunteer, even using fake names, to tally up as many votes as desired for Trump or other candidates at any time. And that, of course, will be part of the claim, look, it's nonpartisan. You can sign up on our site to poll watch and do this kind of questioning, even if you are a Hillary supporter. Stone told Huffington Post that this effort was distinct from the exit poll he plans to conduct through his other group, purportedly intended to prevent voter fraud. The other group is called Stop the Steal. The latter group will require poll volunteers to sign a sworn affidavit attesting that the poll results they gather will be based on interviews with real voters, Stone said. The GOP operative told conspiracy theorist Alex Jones that the Trump campaign could use the affidavits to contest the results of the election. I mean, they could bring them with them to court. I don't know whether anything else will happen, but sure. Can they bring them as paperwork and attempt to enter them into evidence and probably see it rejected? Absolutely. The Republican nominee has assured his supporters that the election results will be rigged against him and urged them to watch the polls in neighborhoods with large African American populations. Some of his supporters have told the press they interpret these comments as a call to make minority voters nervous on Election Day. And, well, if they go ahead and do that and intentionally do so, well, they'll have a criminal justice problem on their hands, provided you can get somebody to the polls who's interested in charging them properly. But, you know, that's a big question mark. Okay, let's see. Other stories that probably deserve a little bit of attention. In case you missed it or didn't quite get the reference, in Greg's segment, Kevin Drum, I believe, has got this piece over at it's Kevin Drum is usually the one who's got things for us at Mother Jones, and so I guess that's why Pocket thought it was. But once I opened the actual article, Natalie Schreier is the writer of this piece. The Trump Files, Donald's words to a grieving mother. It was a little odd, wasn't it? After Kelly Preston's son died, Trump, his story, his like sympathy piece for her. What did he do with it? How did he get it up there? He posted or expressed his condolences to Kelly Preston on the Trump University site of all places. I guess for some reason that was he considered his only internet outlet, but very weird story to be sure. We'll make a long story short here so we can move on to talking to Joan, who's waiting patiently. Hi, Joan.
Hello.
I just felt like I'd tell everybody the story of Donald Trump and Kelly Preston. Did you catch this one yesterday?
Yeah, it's very disturbing.
I would say so. So it's January 2009. Kelly Preston and John Travolta's son, Jet, passed away at the age of 16 after suffering a seizure while on a family vacation. 4 days later, Trump wrote a blog post, which seems like an extraordinary thing for him to be doing at all, but okay, dedicated to Preston on the website of the now defunct Trump University, which they note has been sued by the state of New York and former students for claims of fraud. The mogul, that's Donald Trump, he considers himself a mogul, expressed his condolences to Preston for her loss. Check, that's good, right? But not before he mentioned the time he tried to sleep with her. According to Trump, the attempt failed. And what's really interesting about this, I guess I'll read a little excerpt of it. A long time ago, before I was married, I met Kelly Preston at a club and worked like hell to try and pick her up. He wrote on the Trump University website. Why? Why? Aside from all the other whys about this. She was beautiful, personable, and definitely had allure. He wouldn't be trying like hell to pick her up if he didn't, because I'd only do that with you remember all his comments about his accusers. At the time, I had no idea she was married to John Travolta, which, okay, you could look it up. But whatever. He continued, in any event, my track record on the subject has always been outstanding, of course. I'm so manly. But Kelly wouldn't give me the time of day. She was very nice, very elegant, but I didn't have a chance with her, and that was that. That is an odd thing to write about anybody ever, like on the occasion of their wedding, on the occasion of their divorce, for that matter, and now they're free again. But on the occasion of your son's death, that is a little unusual, to say the very least. I don't know if I would reveal that kind of information about anybody ever. And if I did and wanted to do it on a blog, I would start a personal blog, not the Waldman University blog. That wouldn't be the place for it. But that's maybe one of the more revealing things about the way Donald Trump treats women, that he basically says, I just heard this terrible news. Just so you people know what a quality woman I think she is, and then at which point you say, what am I even listening to your idea of whether or not a person is a person of quality or not, much less a woman. I know I don't trust you on anywhere near them in any way. But he's like, no, I really want to say something flattering and impressive about this woman. All right, against my better judgment, I will give you a chance. Go ahead, Donald. What do you have to say? She was so hot. I wanted to sleep with her so bad. That's how you know that she's good enough for me to say, I'm sorry her son died. That's it. That's the upshot of the whole thing. Why am I sorry that her son died? Because she's so hot. That's why I'm sorry her son died. Not because her son died or anything like that, or she's well known, or perhaps beloved by millions of Americans. I don't really think Kelly Preston is, but okay. But she's famous. People appreciate her, whatever. They know John Travolta. I think he's more famous than her, but they're very famously married. But what an odd thing to do, to say, well, I am sorry that her son died because, God, she was hot. So hot that even I couldn't get her. That's how hot she knew how hot she was married, was what was happening, for one thing. And for another, you're creepy and disgusting. And if she wasn't married, she might not have liked you anyway. But that's who deserves our sympathy when their children die? People who are hot, who I tried to get in bed with, but couldn't. But that's how classy she was. She was so, I shoot for the top, is what I'm saying here. And I couldn't get her. That's how amazing she was. So everybody be sorry about her son. I think that there should have been more of a decent interval before telling that story. But Donald thought it was not only interesting and relevant, but the students of Trump University would like to know about that. Personally, I would say that's another exhibit in the fraud suit against him. How do I know your university was a fraud? Look what you were posting on the university website. You didn't even make an attempt to educate me about real estate. You nut? What's wrong with you? Oh, my God. So he's the worst person in the world. Hi, Joan.
Kagro. He is the worst person in the world.
He really is. Who would, I don't know. I don't know anybody who would put this on there. Ask yourself what you would put on your business website. Not a chance in the world you would tell that story on any website. Much less the one where, I remember when I charged you $35,000 for the secrets of the universe? Let me tell you about some hot girls I liked once. Their kids are dead. Anyway, she's so hot. Wow. I'd want my money back just from that. Okay, so now you know the story, and you know my thoughts on it, and we can drop it for the moment, anyway, and head on to other subjects. Unless, of course, there's so many things about Donald Trump, the election, his surrogates, his weirdness in general. We can certainly spend all day on it, if you wish. But as I noted in the Morning Post, this is our second to last Joan McCarter visit before it's all over election-wise. Or at least we hope it's all over election-wise.
We hope it's all over election-wise.
Yeah. So,
it really, 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 really needs to end.
Yeah, well, yeah, I'm done with it. I voted, so that's good. I banked that. But yeah, there'll be several days of at least small-scale mysteries, I'm sure. Even if it's a landslide in the presidential race, we're going to be, as usual, recounting and probably litigating and having runoffs in several congressional seats. So we may not know all that quickly after Election Day. What's the story in the House?
The House and potentially even the Senate.
It is possible. The Senate, too. I mean, it should be close. And if one of those, you all remember Al Franken's election and how that went.
Oh, Lord. Please, no.
Please. I suppose we could find ourselves in that situation again somewhere. Although I don't think I could pick one, given the the polls and say that's the one that's going to be down to the wire and that we're going to be 6 months in litigation for, but no one would have predicted that either, even for Al Franken.
My greatest hope for this election is we get through it without bloodshed.
That's a good one. I have my doubts.
Yeah.
Of course, I'm more worried about people accidentally shooting themselves patrolling the polls than having a confrontation with someone else. I do think that will happen, but more time will be spent with people who show up armed to the polls, with them really basically fantasizing about things and fondling their guns while doing it.
Yeah.
Then there will be actual confrontations. The people who are there to vote will be busy.
If they shoot themselves, fine.
Yeah.
Darwin.
Right, and hopefully it just stays with them. Occasionally the bullet goes through or fragments on the ground. But, all right, well, we hope for the best on that. I wonder if anybody told the poll watchers that they need to vote early first, and then go, or whether they will they be there and then at like 8 o'clock go, oh, crap. And I went 3 counties away.
That's a really good question.
I won't bring it up. I mean, just among us, but that would be
we
that
won't
would be
tell
amazing.
them.
Yeah,
because chances are they're not going to think of that.
I really think that a lot of them won't. I really do.
Or there'll be the guy that was on, I think, MSNBC last night. So just the man on the street kind of interviews, the Trump supporter in the street kind of interviews. Oh, I'm not going to vote because Trump already told me it's rigged. There's no point.
Yeah. Oh, yes, that's true. People are beginning to say that.
Yes, let's believe that. You go with that, guys. Don't show up.
Yeah. That's not what he meant. But that's cool. You do you. You draw your own conclusion. That's definitely going to happen for some people, no doubt about it. And
there's a chunk of these people who aren't really voters anyway.
That's true. And who may think, well, I've forgotten to register, or I never have registered, and the deadline has passed, so I might as well. I'm going to spend my day. I wish I had registered so I could vote for Trump, but I didn't, so I'll just go out and harass people who aren't going to vote for Trump.
Right.
Maybe that's the best way I can help. So they'll probably go and do that, and I don't doubt that there will be people out there watching some other precinct and then forgot to vote, and then when somebody comes out and says, all right, it's 7:30, I'm just announcing that if you're in line at 8, we'll let you vote. So everyone just make sure you know that we're coming. And then him saying, oh my God, I forgot. And then trying to get in line and vote there, but forgetting that he's not at his precinct. And then essentially attempting to commit in-person voter fraud by trying to vote inside. Now, if he's armed at the same time, that'd be interesting. Well, I don't doubt that somewhere in some precinct in America, you'll have somebody waving a gun at poll workers, insisting that they be given a provisional ballot to vote, because even though they know this isn't their precinct, I was being a patriot here all day, so you owe me a vote. I'm just theorizing that, someone's going to try and do that one, but hopefully not. And they certainly won't get a ballot out of it. So, let's see. All right, so I'm scanning your stories of the last couple of days. Is there anything in particular that...
Well, right now I'm a little obsessed over the whole Marco Rubio, Patrick Murphy situation.
Okay.
And a little bit disturbed by the fact that the DSCC has decided to cut Patrick Murphy loose.
Yeah. What?
Yeah.
I mean, how do I explain that? I don't get, why is one question, and also, was he not recruited to the race,
by
for this
the DSCC?
purpose? And,
yes, he was.
Do you have any inkling what the hell is going on?
It's a very expensive media market.
Okay.
This is the argument that we're getting from the DSCC. They can take the money that they would have spent in Florida and redirect it to North Carolina, Missouri, Indiana, where media is less expensive.
All right.
But here's the thing. Enough people want to take Marco Rubio down that there's plenty of money to put into Florida still. You can expand the race in those other states and still not abandon Florida. Chuck Schumer is running ads for his own race in New York. Did you know Chuck Schumer was up for re-election this year?
I had forgotten.
Because there's no race there.
Oh,
he's got $20 million, well, $14 million. He's given $6 to other Senate campaigns. He doesn't need all that of his own money.
Is he in a position to move his money to Florida? Is he maxed somehow there, or he can do, I guess, independent expenditures? But
if they wanted to make Florida a priority, they could find the money to make Florida a priority. This just doesn't make any sense to me. Rubio is damaged. We had the other story from this weekend of Rubio being booed off the stage at a Latino festival in Orlando.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's certainly beatable. It's hard to imagine that Chuck Schumer would do this and say, well, we'll roll the dice in Florida. He must think it's a lock, I would guess. But, I mean...
It's not a lock.
It doesn't really help, even if he thinks it is. There's other objective reasons to believe it's not.
Yes.
I always hate these sorts of situations because it's so confusing. He's such Schumer can be a very sharp-elbowed partisan. Of course, he can also be a very sharp-elbowed self-promoter, and that's troubling.
It's troubling. It's particularly troubling when you look at, for example, the speech President Obama gave down there just last week, Thursday, I think, where about half the time he was railing on Donald Trump and the other half of the time he was railing on Marco Rubio. This is a priority for all the other Democrats. It's a priority for the Clintons. It's a priority for Harry Reid, who apparently is not happy, if you can believe Politico, and it is Politico.
Yeah, okay. Well, he's retiring, of course, but Schumer, by all accounts, is to succeed him as majority leader, which makes it all the more puzzling that he wouldn't be working for every seat at maximum overdrive. I just, and you never forget to find out, what were you thinking? Sometimes after the election, he'll be asked that, but you always get the sense that Chuck Schumer's intentionally telling you half the story on things that he's
right.
too
and
clever
by the way,
half.
Indiana,
yeah,
Bai really needs the help. Bai can't come up with enough money.
Yeah. You're asking to help Evan Bai? You're giving me a headache. Okay, it's a Democrat, etc. For the moment. I don't think he would switch
I think
parties.
Evan Bai's probably got enough lobbyist connections that Evan Bai can come up with the money for this race. I don't think that he's really going to need the DSCC's help.
Yeah, I mean, maybe that's it. Maybe you just I need to encourage you to stretch a little bit here, Evan.
North Carolina, Florida, or Missouri, yes. Okay.
Yeah. Certainly if I had to help make that call, I think I would be with you there and say, the money needs to go elsewhere. Evan, you're going to have to do this on your own. After all, you came along late and big-footed the other guy out because you got this.
Right.
Well, go get it.
Go get it.
Also, I don't like you a whole lot. But okay. Do I need that? A D in that seat and you're the one? Too late? Okay, yes. You have me there. But, yeah.
It just does not make sense to me to not knock Rubio out or do everything in your power to try to knock Rubio out now. He's been defeated once already in Florida. Do it twice in 1 year, the presidential primary and his Senate race. Do it twice in 1 year and his political future is crap. As it should be.
Yeah. And, right. So, considering that, I suppose he otherwise tries to come back next time around in the next presidential race,
We
one
know
less
he's going
person
to
for
do
you.
that.
But he says he's not.
We know in 2 years he's going to start his
Dang.
presidential campaign.
Yeah. I mean, I guess there's a risky calculation, and I don't know. Maybe it's part of Schumer's thinking where he says, I think I can get this one for free. I think he's done. I don't think they need my money down there. It would be great to take him out. But
that's
he's
not the
gonna,
thinking. They think
no?
Florida's lost.
Really?
Yeah.
That's nuts. That's
At
very
this election
odd.
that you're not trying to absolutely run the board in this election.
Yeah.
Schumer's a
That's-
smart guy, but this just doesn't make sense to me.
I wonder what they're seeing.
And I
What
wrote
do
that
they-
up. I wrote that
Okay.
it doesn't make sense to me, so I should be getting over it and moving on to the next thing, but I dislike Marco Rubio that much.
Yeah.
And I also
No, this-
really like Patrick Murphy.
Okay.
For one
Not-
thing, he's
not
a Boise
everybody
State
is a
Broncos
huge-
fan.
Oh, okay.
We
He
talked
likes
about
the
it
blue
in
field.
Las Vegas at Netroots Nation.
All right. Well, that's a common thread. That'll help. Not everybody is the biggest Patrick Murphy fan. That's true. I know that there are others who would have preferred a different candidate. Not that I thought it was a great idea that the other guy be nominated either.
Right.
I'd say. But, okay. Yeah,
But-
this is a very puzzling one.
Weigh it out. Who would you rather have representing Florida in the United States Senate? Patrick Murphy and Bill Nelson, or Marco Rubio and Bill Nelson?
Well, that's true.
Speaking of whom, Bill
About
Nelson is also apparently a little bit fuming over this decision.
Yeah. Well, I just don't. I wish I was a fly on the wall. I'd love to know what the motivation is and what makes them think. Do they really think it's lost? Let me hear them say that, or do they just have other reasons for not doing this? I'd love to know what the hell's going on in there.
All
Never
we
will
know
find
from the
out.
story the Politico reported is that the internal polling on the race is anywhere from 10 points to 4 points. The
That's
polling average we have at
astonishing.
Daily Kos of public polls is 4.5 points, which is in striking distance. He's keeping Rubio at 46%, keeping him under 50%, and there's nearly 12% undecided. And apparently a lot of those undecided are Hillary minority voters, people of color, who really only need to hear that Patrick Murphy exists and that, the Clintons like him and Obama likes him and hey, you can vote for somebody other than Marco Rubio. That could make up the difference if he can get the people of color that Clinton's already got. And that's media that's probably still available.
Oh yeah. That's true. You don't think? Well, maybe that's something that could move a couple last minute dollars and say, hey, you can still advertise in the Spanish language media, much more highly targeted. I don't know whether it goes at the same rates or not, but at least it's a smaller buy because it's just less stations.
Right.
All right.
And it's probably less expensive.
Certainly could be.
Anyway, there's my rant for the day.
That's a good
I
rant.
started out early.
That's a good one, and that's great parsing of the overarching narrative. We certainly didn't need any more Donald Trump stuff, although you're welcome to dump on Donald Trump anytime. But yeah, well, good. I'm glad we got to drill down a little bit, and not only into the famed down ballot races, but the real nitty gritty and
We
set
got
the
to
table
talk
for-
about Rubio being booed because
yeah,
Rubio being booed is
that's always
just
good.
delicious.
Yeah, so, but he's being booed by, I guess, Trump supporting Republicans who consider him to be a traitor.
No,
Or who?
Latino
Oh,
voters
Oh, okay. Well, good. They should be voting for
who
him. So
say
why would we
he's a
have to reach
freaking
them?
sellout.
Oh, okay. Because
Quote,
all I
unquote.
was able to catch was the sellout thing, and I said, oh, well, I know Trump voters thought he was a sellout
Yeah,
at some
no.
point, but
No.
no, okay.
His people think he's a sellout.
So maybe we should advertise to them. Jeez.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, it's a disturbing conundrum. I mean, you got to make tough decisions about money and everything, but wow. And well, this is an important understanding to have about Chuck Schumer, even if we don't get all the information about what's making him make this decision. He's going to be the majority. We're going to be frustrated with Chuck Schumer a lot.
We're going to be frustrated with Chuck Schumer a lot. And I think Harry Reid knows we're going to be frustrated with Chuck Schumer a lot. I think Harry Reid is laying a little pathway for us with Chuck Schumer. For example, saying, well, yeah, we'll get rid of the filibuster on the Supreme Court.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, he says so. We'll see what... Chuck Schumer was always a bit of a question mark on this filibuster reform stuff too. That's the thing, is he's a reliable liberal, but he's always a question mark on weird things. And we're never going to be rid of him, but I'm a little tired of not knowing where he's going to be on things.
It's frustrating.
As majority leader, it's tough. I remember though that we spent plenty of years with lots of us frustrated with Harry Reid too, and then towards the end of the career, things really began to sprout for him, and lots of liberals found a lot of love for Harry Reid that they did not have always.
And I think Harry Reid found some love for us that he did not have always.
That's likely true, I guess.
I think the filibuster fight helped. I think
maybe.
We really had his back in that, and he appreciated it. I think it helped.
So. Okay. Well, it certainly changed our relationship with him. I mean, for a long time, he was a stumbling block in that fight, and then things began to change. And, I couldn't tell you which came first, chicken or the egg on that one necessarily, but the fact that we were there and had been talking about it and laying the groundwork and preparing a field for it among the media, too, helped tremendously, I think, so that when he was able to say, that's it, we're fed up, we're doing this thing, it wasn't a shock or a surprise. Everybody had already explained to their audiences how it could be done, why it could be done, why it might need to be done, and then he did it, and I suppose he appreciated the fact that we had helped with that.
I think so.
Okay. Well, yeah, so, all right, there's a little bit of on-the-job training that will likely have to be done.
I think there's going to be a little bit of on-the-job bashing that we're going to have to be doing.
I guess so. And
hey, I just fired the first shot.
Right. Chuck Schumer can take it. Like Harry Reid, they handle it differently on the surface, but both are pretty much the same inside in terms of, I know, this is part of the game. You can yell, you can scream, throw things at me, it's all right.
And so, speaking of filibuster,
yes,
I think that it's going to happen because I think that we are seeing a Republican Senate perfectly willing to continue on with an 8-member Supreme Court as long as they have to.
I guess they can't see any real significant reason not to. I mean, it's embarrassing and weird. But
no,
Mitch
they
don't
McConnell
care.
is not embarrassed.
I mean, it's embarrassing to the country. We're embarrassed that this keeps having to happen.
It's embarrassing for the rest of us, yes.
Yeah, they're not. They don't care. It doesn't make any difference to them. They don't lose very often because of it, or at least they don't believe that that's the reason that they're losing. So, but it's very hard to imagine because it's so outside the norms that they might just say, we're just literally never going to do this.
As long as there's a Democratic president, it's not happening. And, it could be that Mitch McConnell would be so embarrassed by this election that he'd change his tactics, but I don't see that happening.
No. Not
at this point, he's just holding out for 2018. He's just going to try to skip over 2016. He's not going to say anything about Donald Trump. He's not going to say anything about the danger that Donald Trump poses to our country by saying he's not going to accept the results of this election. McConnell has nothing to say about any of that. He's just waiting for 2018 when he has a better Senate map.
Okay. Well, that may be the best hand he's got. So I guess I don't...
It's not a particularly good hand for the nation. It's not a particularly good hand for the Senate Majority Leader.
No, and we ought to spend every moment possible beating him up over it, and he's just going to have to sit there and take it. But, he can do it because he doesn't have to run for a while. So, okay, I guess it's a strategy. It's not leadership. It's a personal strategy. Awful. not
it's
surprising.
Awful.
Yeah.
It's awful. And it's not going to be not awful under President Clinton.
Yeah. Well, let's see. So I imagine you're right, and that although it's just so hard to imagine them just literally after all this time saying, well, we're not going to do it in the last year of a presidency. The new president should have the right to do that. It's going to be fascinating to those of us who remember watching them say, well, also not for a new president either, or really ever for any Democrat from now on. And
their excuses are so transparent and so lame.
I'm curious what they're going to come up with for...
They don't care. I don't think that they feel they need to have a good excuse.
Yeah, you're right. Maybe I shouldn't even be curious. I think you probably just answered the question for me, and the answer is going to be, well, whoever she nominated, they're an extremist liberal.
I mean, here we go. Judicial Watch.
Okay.
Judicial Watch has already said that they'll push for impeachment. So Republicans will happily go along with the Clinton impeachment. They can't have a Supreme Court nominee from a president under such a cloud. There's their excuse.
Okay. I mean, wow. I don't know what else to say except that, okay, so it was a standing joke that we used to laugh, oh, well, they'll just call for, like, Obama's impeachment. But they waited until after he won to then say, all right, well, we'll impeach Obama. Now it's even months or weeks before the election. Well, don't worry about the outcome of the election. We're going to impeach the winner of the election. Which, by the way, talk about rigging.
I don't know if you saw that, but that's one of the stories this morning.
I hadn't seen that, but I got the sense that they were gearing up for that. I don't know. I thought they'd wait to say so for some reason. And then I guess so. Well, she's under a cloud and Benghazi and emails and whatever, and we're going to impeach her for that. I guess I'm reminded a little bit about the 2004 election and saying, wow, we just learned late, thanks a lot, New York Times, that, for instance, we were all under warrantless surveillance on a massive scale. Maybe we ought to be thinking about what we should do about impeachment there. And the answer was, oh, no, we've had our election. That's my accountability moment.
Right.
America
even
said
though
it
you
was
didn't know this story.
Right. But
before the election. We knew the story before the election, but we didn't publish it, so you didn't know it.
We knew it, and then we saw you elect him, and then we added those two things together, and that means, if they had announced it, of course, ahead of time, and people had absorbed it, I still wouldn't necessarily agree with that analysis, but
that
they
it would have
certainly
changed
be
the election
saying,
outcome.
Yeah, they would have been saying, well, look, you had your chance. This is how we change courses or get rid of presidents. We do it at the ballot box. We don't do this, crazy after the fact overturning the results of an election. And P.S. at that point, that in 2004 they still felt it was a reasonable thing to say that impeaching Bush for this violation of massive number of Americans' First Amendment rights would be just tit for tat. Because Clinton got impeached, you're just looking to impeach the next Republican president as revenge somehow. You don't have any kind of real basis for doing this. And here on the other side we have Well, everybody who's actually studied the whole Benghazi thing and even the emails things ends up saying, yeah, not really something there, so can't help you. And they're like, well, we're going to impeach him anyway, and that won't be tit for tat because we're always the ones doing it, so I guess there's no tat involved whatsoever. And P.S., accountability moments only count for Republicans.
Yeah.
You know, she just won in a giant landslide. Biggest crushing of a Republican since forever. Yeah, but people were mostly voting against him because he's, you know, too handsy.
Yeah.
They weren't actually saying they validated her view of what happened.
Well, and then there's the whole possibility that there really will be some effort by the Russians to cast doubt on the results of the election.
Yes.
So, you know, they're going to do everything they can for there not to be a mandate for Clinton.
Oh, yes. They certainly wouldn't allow it, even if
and it could be
went to the
anything
polls.
from Russia manufacturing documents and releasing them through WikiLeaks to show that there was problems at some polling sites to who knows what.
Yeah. Yeah, it could be any number of things, either direct like that or just plain mischief like, you know, I don't really care whether we affect the outcomes of the elections or not, but let's screw around with America because the more absorbed they are in their own problems, the less they get in our face.
We already know. We already know that they're going to do everything they can to delegitimize Hillary Clinton. I mean, it's happening now.
Yeah.
They're doing it now. Just as they did with the birther stuff with Obama. It's happening now.
I can believe it. And even for people who have difficulty with well, now I guess with liberals taking on the weird role of being the, what used to be red baiters. I guess they're not red anymore. I don't know whether they consider themselves that or not. But it does always feel strange to me every time the story comes up to be in the position of saying, yeah, Russia secretly plotting to... That is weird because we grew up when weirdo conservatives did that. But it's not hard to believe in a geopolitical sense. The Russians are still... They are who they are, and we're not close pals. It's not Cold War anymore the way it was, but we have never really been in close cooperation, at least under a Putin administration with Russia. Things have been better with other heads of state in Russia, certainly, than with Putin, even post-Cold War. But given those tensions, whoever they think is going to win, if they thought Donald Trump, I mean, there's a possibility, if you don't believe that they're in cahoots, then I guess you could still ask yourself, why wouldn't Russia have an abiding interest in a confused and distracted America? They always will. Yeah. Just geopolitically, it makes sense. They may very well, even if they had a great personal relationship that was open and documented between Putin and Trump, if they thought Trump was going to win, they might do more to wipe their fingerprints off it, but they would still be looking to undermine and delegitimize Trump's control of the levers of power that would allow him to, you know, win in confrontations of any kind, anywhere, with Russia. Of course they would do it. We would do it. We do it.
Yeah.
That's the nature of our relationship with the Russians. So, I don't know. I don't know why it's impossible to believe, but certainly the idea that there are some more far-fetched theories than others, I guess we could say, but there will be places for them to insert themselves in this narrative, no doubt.
No doubt.
Including, I think, lots of discussion of more hacking attacks that could disrupt what parts of the election day system actually operate over the internet. Not that local
and
balloting
there aren't a
does,
lot of them. Doing an actual hack on the system is going to be a lot less doable than trying to cast doubt over it after the fact.
Yeah, or just
it's
make it
so
more
decentralized. It's so localized.
Yeah, it's. I think the latest thoughts on it about after the latest internet outages was more along the lines of not hacking and like replacing the numbers and the results from individual precincts so much as it is if you're just generally having awful communications problems on a day when communications are so crucial.
Right.
Things go haywire and get frustrating and take longer to do, and the longer it takes to get things squared away with your results, the more room there is for more fear-mongering, conspiracy theorist, hand-wringing, and more worry.
Yep.
And, it might be just as simple as that. So, vote early.
Yeah, vote early and then spend your time helping other folks vote.
Yes, and if the internet is down, you can use your cell phone to make those calls or run a message to the local headquarters or whatever.
Right. So, it's a great thing to do on Election Day.
Have your hands free.
If you're not voting, you've already taken care of it, you're done. I'm doing it today.
Yes,
and,
okay, good.
Go help others. And, there are a few things that you can do through Daily Kos. We've partnered with Vote Riders. Now, this just happened at the end of last week. Vote Riders is working in Wisconsin, North Carolina, and I should know the 3 other states off the top of my head, but I don't, where we have issues with voter suppression and voter ID. We're trying to get volunteers to help folks who are both trying to get their ID and their voter registration, and on Election Day, rides to the polls, stuff like that. So you can look at stories at Daily Kos to see the links to do that, and they're in the splashes that come up on the page when you sign in.
Okay.
And going out in email. And we're also working with the Election Protection Coalition to get folks into the polls, trained, knowing what to do as poll watchers, particularly lawyers, law students, paralegals, anybody with any legal training at all to help with election protection and making sure that the vote is protected. So you can sign up for those things through Daily Kos.
Excellent. A great idea also, and easier to do if you've already taken care of your obligations in terms of voting.
Vote early. Vote early.
Yeah.
Vote early.
A million good reasons to do that. So great. I like the partnerships. The training is fantastic. You're going to need it more than ever this year, as people this time will just be waving pocket constitutions at you and insisting something in here says, I can stick my gun in your face. No, not in here, actually. We can talk about that. But you'll need specific training on how to deal with people who insist that, sure, the law says I can't do this, but I'm such a patriot, I should be allowed to. You're going to have to be able to cite them chapter and verse and sound like a lawyer. And sometimes with these folks that actually works, and you'll be able to avoid serious problems and having to call the police to the polls again. Yeah. Well, all right. I mean, what else might we slip in there that we have to keep an eye on? Or maybe we hit all the highlights. I'm not sure.
Well, I'm going to have to write more about Obamacare because I am never not going to be writing about Obamacare.
They won't let you not write about it.
Yeah. Another one of my mini rants. When you're talking about double-digit premium increases in Obamacare, you're also talking about double-digit subsidy increases. The subsidies go along with premium increases, so very, very few people are actually going to be feeling a double-digit premium increase.
I feel like that has not gotten as much attention.
No, it has not. So,
That's a great point, and thank God we have a place like Daily Kos to come and get that, and experts to come and get it from, like you. I mean, all I really saw in the way of discussion about it in the mainstream traditional press was, at best, well, sure, these increases are happening, but they were anticipated in the original design, and they never got around to saying, and the reason you know that they were anticipated is that there's actually a solution also in the design, and it is, we'll give you more money.
Yeah.
And you'll be okay.
Yeah.
Oh, I feel a lot better.
And the other important thing, Larry Levitt from Kaiser Family Foundation tweeted this out yesterday. We are still, even with that increase in subsidies, which is an increase in taxpayer expenses, it's still lower than what CBO had projected we were going to be spending on it at this point. We're still saving money with it compared to what CBO thought we would be spending. So it's basically still a pretty good deal for the American taxpayer.
Yeah.
Which is not to say that there's not a lot in Obamacare that needs to be fixed. We need to figure out how to keep out-of-pocket costs down, still have too high deductibles, still have too high copays. But, it's still 22 million people who have health insurance that didn't before.
Yes, and for less than they would have had to have spent to get it by far, certainly, and still net everyone's expenditures lower. That's terrific.
Yep. And just your, regular reminder, Republicans want to make it all go away.
Yes.
Democrats want to fix it.
Yeah, and we're on year 7 of we're going to have a plan to replace it any second now.
Any second now.
It's coming. Just you wait. Well, I'm glad we got to that because I did that. That has been, I think, a deficiency in, and admittedly, it's a secondary issue for me in terms of what am I checking each morning. But yeah, I felt like there was something very important missing from the discussion. Geez, it seems like this would be more of an issue among Democrats if it was really going to leave a lot of people in the lurch. So they probably don't think so, but I'm not hearing why from people. And
that's
the answer
why.
in hindsight is quite obvious, but gosh, you have to say it.
Yeah.
All right. I appreciate that you did. It always makes Daily Coast Radio listeners smarter to have you come by, Joan.
Well, thank you.
And in this case, certainly no exception. I imagine that they now want you to write that down and publish it.
Yes, I wrote it yesterday, but I need to write
Yes.
it again. This is something that we need to talk about. So
sometimes repetition is the medicine we're looking for here.
Yeah.
Hey, and it's paid for under Obamacare too, which is great. Okay, well I will I guess free you up to do that. I appreciate your coming by as always and updating us. And I know it's as we get closer and closer to Election Day, the visits are less and less planned, and they feel a little frenetic, but these things have to be vented and discussed, no doubt. And we're going to be talking an awful lot about the dynamics of what happened in Florida, no matter what ends up being the outcome. That's going to be a lot of our post-election postmortem, I'm sure.
I think it is, particularly if we have Marco Rubio to kick around in another 4 years.
And, I guess the good news is he won't go to work a lot. I guess we'll have to go, if you actually physically want to kick him, you'll have to go to Florida.
Yes.
Which is a nice state. You should visit. Anyway, okay.
Well, hey, if it's booing or kicking Marco Rubio, I'll go to Florida.
I would kick him in Alaska if I had to. Okay. Well, thanks so much. And, another, back to the salt mines with you. And we'll visit with you. Next Wednesday will be inside of a week till Election Day.
Yep.
Unbelievable.
And the really good news, we're not going to have to talk about any more debates.
Yes, thankfully. Even though Donald Trump said he was willing to have a fourth one.
Yeah,
I noticed
right.
that. I don't know
Kelly
why
Conway said he was willing to have a fourth
one. Oh, okay. Yeah, I don't know. I suppose it costs you nothing to say you were willing. It's not going to happen. But odd thing for them to even bother doing. Why don't they think those are rigged? I don't know.
Why?
I don't know. Not really sure. Might as well be. Okay. Well, again, thanks so much, and we'll be hanging on tight and watching, and keep in mind all of what Joan has given you by the way of insight into Chuck Schumer, what progressives are going to have to be doing vis-a-vis Chuck Schumer for the next couple of years. And thank you very much for arming everybody with the truth about the Obamacare headlines. Talk to people in line while you're voting early so you can get yourself free for Election Day, and assure them everything's going to be okay, even if you, like Donald Trump, don't use the Obamacare that much.
That's an excellent summation of our time together this morning. Thank you.
Thanks so much. I appreciate it. Take care, Joan.
Talk to you next
check in
week.
With you again in a week. Very good. Joan McCarter, senior political writer at Daily Kos, giving us all those senior political topics about which she is writing. See? I knew we would sum things up that easily. All right. We got a couple of minutes left, and guess what? The Daily Beast has added another log to the Donald Trump weird relationship with models fire. And we probably have enough time to actually squeeze that in, although I feel like we're doing an awful lot on that. But I don't know. I find this to be a compelling narrative. This time, the Daily Beast is a weird publication. I don't know how I feel about them. But they're certainly doing yeoman's work on this. Why the yeomen never do their own work, I have no idea. Model Paula Patrice. Trump shoved his tongue down my throat. We get a lot of that phrasing. But then again, Republicans love to talk about people who force things down their throat. I don't know what it is, but people don't like it. It's not pleasant. But what I was laughing at is, it just says above the headline in red lettering here. I don't know what they would call this little bit that they stick in before all their articles. They sometimes describe a sort of like a reporting genre or a vertical that Daily Beast keeps, but this just says ew, which I find funny. Ew. And the headline, Model Paula Patrice. Trump shoved his tongue down my throat. Paula Patrice was hardly old enough to legally drink when Donald Trump made his move. A familiar theme. Since I told you the other day about the underage 17-year-old model, I did tell you about this, right? This was all part of the TMZ reporting. Did I not get I got to check my own records. Anyway, let me give you this story. And if not, remind me. So just tweet at me. Hey, you didn't tell me about the underage model that he had serving Trump vodka at a Super Bowl party in 2008. Tell me more about it tomorrow. I will. Brandy Zadrozny has this story, though, in the Daily Beast today. Paula Patrice was barely old enough to drink the alcohol she served up as a New York City bartender, but at least she was old enough, when she got into the elevator at Trump Tower in 1993. The aspiring model, and what a great place for an aspiring model to be, rode to what she thought would be the top floor. It was the highest she'd ever been in any building anyway, to meet her date for the night, millionaire and New York City nightclub fixture Donald Trump. Trump, then a 46-year-old father of three, had recently divorced his wife Ivana, and his tumultuous relationship with aspiring actress Marla Maples was apparently off again when a reporter at Newsday wrote that Trump had stolen Paula, that's in quotes, from a bouncer at the country club on East 86th Street, one of a handful of Manhattan night spots that served as a meeting space for young models who dreamed of being the next Cindy Crawford and the rich men who could finance their New York City stays. But Paula didn't go to the penthouse. When Paula finally entered the Fifth Avenue apartment, it was clear she wasn't in Trump's home, but instead a sort of corporate apartment. There was no food or personal belongings. The only thing in the fridge was champagne. This is creepy. Trump came in and poured her a drink. They sat on the couch and admired the view. It's his dating pad. It's his sex pad, is what he's got going on here. And the first thing he did after pouring a drink was try and stick his tongue down my throat, she recalls. He doesn't wait. He just grabs him. He just starts automatically kissing him. With a beautiful woman, I just pop a tic-tac. I just start kissing. Can we at least pretend to have a dinner? Can we be seen in public? Paula says she then told him, I'm sorry, no, and thought, crap, there goes the PR. Paula's story echoes comments that Trump made to Access Hollywood host Billy Bush in 2005 when he bragged, I'm just automatically attracted to beautiful women. I just start kissing them. You remember that. Since a tape of that conversation, in which Trump also boasted, when you're a star, they let you do it, blah, 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 was leaked to the Washington Post, several women have come forward in recent weeks with accounts of sexual assault that includes forced kissing and groping by Trump. Trump has emphatically denied every accusation, at times with the caveat that the women accusing him were too unattractive to be believed. Over the weekend, he vowed to sue each of the accusers after the election. No word, by the way, on how that's going. Unlike Trump's accusers, though, several of whom have appeared on television to recount feeling violated by the alleged assaults, Paula said her kiss with Trump annoyed her and amused her, but it didn't harm her. Trump was, she said, a sign of the times. Donald Trump's were a dime a dozen, Paula said. It's terrible, but at the same time, in those days, that was the way these guys behaved. Sure, I went there hoping for a nice gentlemanly night out, but I didn't feel violated by his forwardness. I mean, it wasn't even a move. It was at the most novice level. He's not going to like that. The guy had no moves. Maybe he's got better moves. According to Page 6 and Newsday reports at the time, Trump spent many a night in the Manhattan nightclubs, during his 3-year hiatus between marriages from 91 to 93. Trump at that time was just sort of the party scene in New York, Paula said. Clubs like the China Club, setting of an alleged sexual assault by Trump in another case, and the Country Club, where Paula worked, where Paula describes a little ecosystem of party promoters and New York City celebrities. And the chronicling of their comings and goings into gossip rags was an exercise in self-promotion. According to Paula, her boss, restaurateur Miles Chaffetz, Chaffetz was a genius public relations manipulator who had the idea to fill the club with exotic dancers. Chaffetz, not Jason, but Miles, would send limos to strip clubs like Scores and Stringfellows at shift change. Get it? That's when people like Trump started to come, Paula said. In December of 1992, Newsday reported model/bartender Paula Patrice was lured away by the comeback kid, a reference to Trump. What's worse is that all of this is being done right inside the China Club, which is fast becoming Donald's Monday night nest. Yeah, it's come up before, and in a couple of other situations as well. And other girls have said that's where he sort of preyed on them too. Just another sort of building block in the edifice of weirdness of what goes on, the frat house atmosphere of Trump Tower. I think it's actually quite significant that it happened, or that he lures her away to Trump Tower, but not to his home, but rather to another apartment that he just keeps vacant, like a corporate sex apartment for himself and probably for his buddies as well. Not at all inconsistent with what we've heard before about the guy. And, of course, the underage stuff and the drinks involved. I feel certain that I have brought up the Super Bowl party in the past, but it may have been that we just chatted about it online in Twitter and ranted about it, never really gave you a full description of it on the air. Well, we got some time for that tomorrow. Then, of course, Friday, we'll be talking to Josie Duffy Rice, or at least we anticipate that will go smoothly as well. Still working to try to get Swedish Jewfish to come on the air, but I'm sure she's super busy with writing up her next installment. She did, as I said, diary just the other day in reaction to the Michael Gross story we shared yesterday. So this will be a theme. It'll come back up. We'll talk about it more, despite our better instincts, let's say. What's coming up next on Netroots Radio with the guys at the after show? Well, okay. Well, this is the signal to justice. I don't have your summary today, but I'm sure it's something that is super fantastic. It always is, and it usually is, and this is very important, and I'm serious about this. All the real and substantive issues surrounding this election and more that we couldn't get to because Donald Trump is just too disgusting.
From Daily Kos Radio on netrootsradio.com. You have been listening to the Kagro in the Morning Show
with David Waldman.
Absolutely, as usual, very important stuff. In Indiana, Mike Pence's Indiana, they've got the lowest voter turnout in the country, but state police are trying to block almost 45,000 black citizens from voting. He'll tell you about why and how. And in Wisconsin, where lines are doubling, they are keeping extra voting machines away from the universities because students might be Democrats.